Welcome to today's Explainer. To kick things off, I want you to picture a scene. Imagine you're a ninth grade student sitting at a perfectly organized study desk in a bright modern classroom in Pakistan. The morning sun is just pouring in, you've got your biology textbook flipped open, and your teacher is up at the whiteboard, marker in hand, totally ready to decode the mysteries of the natural world. Well, we're going to adopt that exact same focused, curious mindset today. We're exploring how science makes sense of a wildly chaotic natural world, looking at everything from the invisible pathogens floating right around us to the incredibly strict rules we use to name life itself. So let's dive right in with a question that has literally puzzled scientists for decades. What happens when something isn't quite alive, but isn't quite dead either? We're starting our lesson at the very edge of biological classification, looking at the ultimate rule breakers that absolutely refuse to fit into our traditional domains of life. Here is our game plan for today's Explainer. 1. The borderline of life. 2. A real-world threat, COVID-19. 3. The chaos of common names. And finally, 4. Order, binomial nomenclature. Okay, let's jump into part 1, the borderline of life, focusing on viruses, prions, and viroids. If we look closely at the structures of these two common viruses, it's pretty wild. On the left, you've got this geometric, almost robotic-looking bacteriophage, and on the right, the spiked, spherical influenza virus. What makes these tiny structures so baffling to biologists is that they lack the universal genes we see across all cellular life. In fact, they literally cannot function independently. They have to completely depend on a host cell, whether that's a plant, an animal, or a bacteria, just to replicate and synthesize their own proteins. It's basically a biological hijacking. Because of this, we categorize them as acellular. And that means exactly what it sounds like. They are not made of cells, and they lack organelles entirely. A virus is essentially just a nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA, wrapped up in a protective protein coat. And because they're acellular and can't run any metabolism on their own, viruses are totally excluded from the traditional categories of living things. They are forever stuck right on that borderline between living and non-living. But wait, the weirdness doesn't stop with viruses. Prions take this minimalist approach a massive step further. They don't even have the nucleic acid that viruses do. They are just acellular particles composed of proteins only. Yet, even without a single drop of DNA or RNA to their name, they are still incredibly infectious and can cause severe diseases. And then we have viroids. Viroids strip things down to the absolute bare minimum in a totally different way. They're composed of circular RNA only, completely lacking the protein coat that viruses have. But even as these incredibly simple naked particles, they're perfectly capable of infecting plant life and causing disease. Moving on to part 2, a real-world threat, COVID-19. Let's look at viruses in action. We all know this one. The coronavirus was identified in late 2019 in Wuhan, China, and it quickly triggered a massive pandemic of the respiratory illness we know as COVID-19. This specific virus, bursting onto the global scene so suddenly, is just a textbook example of how an acellular pathogen, something lacking the most basic machinery of life, can effectively hijack human hosts on a massive global scale. And this brilliantly illustrates the mechanics of an outbreak. The virus spreads so easily, primarily through simple respiratory droplets. Just an infected person coughing, sneezing, talking, or even breathing. It can even spread by touching contaminated surfaces. And the symptoms? They are intense. We're talking fever, cough, and shortness of breath, all the way to extreme fatigue, loss of taste or smell, and in severe cases, incredibly dangerous respiratory problems, especially for older adults or folks with underlying health conditions. But science gives us the tools to fight back. We have 3 crucial, highly effective steps for prevention. Number 1, wearing a mask over your nose and mouth. Number 2, washing your hands frequently with soap for at least 20 seconds, or using hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol. And number 3, vaccination. Vaccines are absolutely critical. They train your immune system to recognize and fight the virus, which drastically reduces the severity of the disease and breaks that chain of infection. All right, part 3, the chaos of common names and why we desperately need a better system. Let's head back to our classroom setting in Pakistan for a really fantastic example of this. Think about a simple onion. In Urdu, its common name is piyaz. But if you travel around to different regions of the country, that exact same vegetable is known as ganda, basal, or vasal. Now, imagine you're a scientist trying to share a vital agricultural breakthrough with a researcher on the other side of the world. When one simple plant has 4 totally different common names in just one country, Well, it's a recipe for total confusion, right? On top of that, common names usually have no scientific basis whatsoever. Just look at this breakdown. Every day we use terms like silverfish, crayfish, jellyfish, and starfish. But the true scientific definition of a fish is a vertebrate animal with a backbone, fins, and gills. A starfish or a jellyfish completely fails to meet that definition. Scientifically speaking, they aren't fish at all. Which brings us nicely to part 4, order binomial nomenclature, the science of naming. To fix all this chaos, we rely on a brilliant naming system formalized by Carolus Linnaeus called binomial nomenclature. This is a strict 2-part scientific naming system, and the absolute genius of it is the use of the Latin language, because Latin is essentially a dead language, meaning it's not spoken natively by any single modern country today. No single nation is favored. It creates a perfectly neutral, standardized language for biologists all over the globe, whether they speak Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, or English. Notice the elegant structure we have here. Every single organism gets exactly 2 parts to its name. The genus name comes first, followed by the specific species name. So that confusing onion, it is universally Allium cepa. A potato is Solenum tuberosum. A tiger is Panthera tigris, and we are Homo sapiens. Thanks to this system, 2 different organisms can never, ever have the exact same scientific name. Let's memorize the essential rules of binomial nomenclature together. Think of these as the strict grammatical laws of our biological universe. Rule 1, words are derived from Latin. Rule 2, every scientific name is absolutely unique. Rule 3, the first part, the genus, always begins with a capital letter. And Rule 4, the second part, the species name, always begins with a lowercase letter. Finally, there are some very critical visual formatting rules you have to follow. If you're typing up a research paper, the scientific name must be written in italics. But if you're sitting at your study desk right now taking handwritten notes in your biology notebook, both parts of the scientific name must be separately underlined. These strict rules instantly signal to anyone reading your work that you are using a verified, proper scientific name. And that leaves us with a truly fascinating mystery to ponder long after this explainer wraps up. We have millions of cellular species beautifully and logically organized by binomial nomenclature. We can perfectly and universally name a tiger, a tomato, or an onion. But those invisible rule breakers of the micro world, the viruses, the prions, and the viroids, they continue to completely defy our neat biological boxes. So will science ever find a perfect way to classify these entities that so stubbornly blur the line between living and non-living? Well, keep your textbook open, keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.